My name is Alex Morgan, and for most of my life, my father's words echoed through every decision I made. You'll never amount to anything in business. Tonight, at age 35, I'm standing outside the elegant ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel adjusting my custom-tailored suit as I prepare to attend my father's retirement party. The irony isn't lost on me. The son he dismissed is now the anonymous buyer of Morgan Industries, the company that defined his identity for 3 decades. Before I share what happened when I finally revealed myself as the new owner of his life's work, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you've ever been underestimated by someone whose opinion actually pushed you to achieve more than they ever thought possible. Growing up in the affluent suburb of Oak Ridge Hills, our sprawling colonial home presented the perfect facade of success, gleaming marble countertops, manicured lawns, and family portraits that captured false moments of harmony. My father, Richard Morgan, had built Morgan Industries from a small manufacturing outfit into a regional powerhouse in precision machinery. His business acumen was matched only by his complete inability to connect emotionally with his youngest son. My older brother, James, was the natural heir to the Morgan kingdom. From childhood, he possessed our father's confident stride, assertive manner, and conventional thinking. James could recite quarterly profit margins by age 12 and spent summers shadowing Dad at the company while I retreated to our basement to disassemble old computers and build experimental gadgets that wasted electricity, according to my father. Your brother understands how the real world works, Dad would say, his disappointment in me barely concealed. These little inventions of yours won't put food on the table or build a legacy. My mother, Catherine, a former art history professor who had gradually dimmed her own light to accommodate my father's growing success, would quietly encourage my creativity when he wasn't around. Some people build with conventional tools, others with imagination, she'd whisper. Don't let anyone confuse different with lesser. The divide between my father and me grew wider during my high school years. While James captained the football team and headed the student investment club activities that earned approving nods at the dinner table, I found myself drawn to computer programming and digital systems. I taught myself coding languages late into the night, developing early prototypes of smart home automation before it became mainstream. My junior year science fair project was an automated inventory tracking system that used primitive RFID technology, rudimentary by today's standards but innovative for the early 2000s. When I suggested that Dad might implement something similar at Morgan Industries to reduce their inventory discrepancies, his response cut deep. Morgan Industries deals in precision machinery, not science fiction gadgets, he scoffed during Sunday dinner. We solve real problems with proven solutions, not chase technological fads that will be obsolete before they're implemented. James smirked across the table while Mom studied her plate. I pushed my food around silently, the familiar sting of dismissal burning in my chest. When you've actually run a business instead of playing with toys, my father continued, cutting his steak with surgical precision, you'll understand the difference between theoretical ideas and practical applications. The summer before college brought the confrontation that would ultimately set the course of my life. I'd been accepted to both Stanford's engineering program and Wharton's business school. The former appealed to my passion for innovation, the latter would have pleased my father. For weeks, I agonized over the decision, knowing that choosing Stanford would be interpreted as a final rejection of the path my father had laid out. The night I told him my decision, we stood in his wood-paneled home office, the shrine to his business accomplishments. Awards and photographs with politicians lined the walls, external validations of a success he made sure everyone acknowledged. Stanford, he said, not looking up from the quarterly report he was reviewing. For engineering? That's your final decision. Yes, I replied, summoning confidence I didn't truly feel. Their program is the best for what I want to do. He finally looked up, removing his reading glasses with deliberate slowness. And what exactly is it you want to do, Alexander? Build more blinking gadgets that solve problems no one has. I want to work in technological innovation, I said. There's potential there that you're not seeing. My father leaned back in his leather chair, studying me as if I were a disappointing investment. Let me tell you something about success in the real world, he said. It's built on practical solutions, proven methods, and relationships with people who matter. Not fantasies about technology replacing human judgment. He stood and walked to the window overlooking our backyard, where an expensive landscaping crew had transformed the space into a magazine-worthy garden that no one in our family actually enjoyed. Your brother understands this. He'll take business courses that will prepare him to eventually take over Morgan Industries. He'll build on what I've created. He turned to face me. But you'll burn through your trust fund chasing impractical dreams and end up with nothing to show for it. The words that followed have fueled me through every setback and doubt for the past 15 years. You'll never succeed in business, Alexander. You don't have what it takes. You've never had the instinct, the drive, or the practical mind for it. I remember the strange calm that settled over me in that moment, not the hurt I expected, but a crystallizing clarity. Then I'll have to prove you wrong, I replied quietly. My father's laugh still echoes in my memory. Well, I admire your optimism, misplaced as it is. When you're ready to join the real world, maybe we can find you something at the company. Something suitable for your abilities. I left for Stanford the next month with minimal fanfare. My mother hugged me tightly at the airport, slipping an envelope into my jacket pocket that I discovered later contained a handwritten note of encouragement and a check, money she'd apparently been setting aside from her personal account for years. My father shook my hand perfunctorily, reminding me to at least take some business electives so you have something practical to fall back on. James drove them to the airport that day, already being groomed to step into our father's shoes at the company. What none of us could have anticipated was how quickly those plans would unravel. Stanford transformed me. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who valued innovation and forward thinking. My professors encouraged the very qualities my father had dismissed as impractical: creative problem solving, technological experimentation, and disruptive thinking. I thrived in this environment, double majoring in computer science and electrical engineering while minoring in business, a concession to the practical voice in my head that still sounded suspiciously like my father. Sophomore year, I developed my first commercially viable product, a predictive maintenance software for manufacturing equipment that could identify potential failures before they occurred. The algorithm was sophisticated, but the interface simple enough for conventional manufacturing managers to embrace. I partnered with my roommate, Raj Patel, whose family ran several textile factories in India, to test and refine the system. Our senior project evolved into our first startup, Predictatech. We secured modest seed funding from a professor's venture capital connections and set up operations in a garage in Palo Alto, embracing the Silicon Valley cliché while simultaneously reinventing ourselves. Those early years were a blur of 18-hour workdays, instant ramen, and the exhilarating terror of building something from nothing. Meanwhile, at Morgan Industries, trouble was brewing. My father had resisted technological modernization for years, considering it an unnecessary expense. James, despite his business degree, lacked the visionary thinking needed to transition the company into the digital era. Their major clients began shifting to competitors who offered more advanced, integrated solutions. During one of my rare visits home for Christmas, the tension at dinner was palpable. James looked perpetually stressed, my father increasingly irritable. When I innocently asked about the company's digital transformation strategy, my father snapped. "Not every business needs to chase technological fads," he said sharply. Morgan Industries has survived for decades on quality craftsmanship and relationships. We don't need Silicon Valley nonsense to tell us how to succeed. I noticed my mother's warning glance and changed the subject, but not before catching a glimpse of something unexpected in James's expression, not the usual smugness, but a flash of doubt, perhaps even fear. Later that night, James found me in the kitchen as I rummaged for a late-night snack, a habit from my startup days when regular meals were a luxury. "How's your little software thing going?" he asked, attempting casual interest. "Predictatech? We just closed our series of funding," I replied, surprised by his inquiry. $5 million. We're expanding to serve clients in 3 additional industries now. James nodded, pouring himself a generous whiskey. "Good for you," he said, without meeting my eyes. "At least someone in the family is adapting to the times." The vulnerability in his voice was so unfamiliar that I almost didn't recognize it. My usually confident brother was floundering. "The old man won't listen," he continued, his voice lowered though our parents had already gone to bed. "We've lost 3 major contracts this quarter to competitors with better systems. I've been telling him we need to modernize, but he says it's too expensive, too disruptive." "What about the board?" I asked. "Can't they see the direction things are heading?" James laughed humorlessly. "The board is full of Dad's golfing buddies. They'll back him until the ship is halfway underwater." I hesitated before asking the next question. "How bad is it, really?" James looked at me then, the facade of the golden child momentarily cracking. "Bad. We might not last another 2 years at this rate." That conversation planted a seed that would take years to germinate. I returned to California and threw myself into growing Predictatech. By our 3rd year, we had expanded beyond predictive maintenance into comprehensive manufacturing optimization systems. Our client list grew to include several Fortune 500 companies, and our workforce expanded to over 100 employees. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was succeeding wildly in precisely the industry my father had dismissed. Our software was saving manufacturing companies millions by preventing equipment failures and optimizing production schedules. The very impractical technology my father had scoffed at was now considered essential by industry leaders. I rarely went home during those years, making excuses about work demands. The truth was more complicated. Each success I achieved simultaneously pulled me further from my father's world and deeper into a desire to prove him wrong. I wasn't just building a company, I was constructing an elaborate rebuttal to his dismissal of my potential. 7 years after founding Predictatech, Raj and I received an acquisition offer from Simmons Industrial Group, one of the largest industrial conglomerates in North America. The figure $380 million was staggering. My share would make me wealthy beyond anything I had imagined when I was tinkering in our basement as a child. The night before signing the acquisition papers, I found myself unable to sleep. The culmination of years of work was at hand, yet something felt incomplete. I had proven my father wrong in one sense. I had succeeded in business, spectacularly so, but he remained unaware of the extent of my success. We had drifted so far apart that he knew only the vaguest details of my professional life, and I had deliberately kept it that way, feeding my resentment in private. After the acquisition, I took 6 months off. While Raj immediately launched into his next venture, I found myself at a crossroads. The drive that had propelled me forward, proving my father wrong, had carried me to success but left me hollow. I traveled, donated to causes I cared about, reconnected with friends from college, but a restlessness persisted. It was during this period that my mother called with news that would set the next chapter of my life in motion. Morgan Industries was up for sale. "Your father would never admit it," she said quietly, "but the company is in trouble. They've lost too many contracts to more innovative competitors. James has been trying to modernize, but it's too little, too late." "Dad's selling?" I asked, genuinely shocked. The company had been his identity for so long, I couldn't imagine him voluntarily letting it go. "The board finally forced his hand," she explained. "They're bringing in an investment bank to handle the sale. Your father is furious. He's calling it a betrayal. But the numbers don't lie. He'll be announced as retiring once the sale is complete." After that conversation, I made a decision that was equal parts business strategy and emotional reckoning. I created Horizon Acquisitions, a holding company with myself as the sole owner but not the public face. Through layers of corporate structure, I concealed my involvement completely. Working through intermediaries, I began the process of acquiring Morgan Industries. The due diligence was eye-opening. The company that had once been a regional leader was now technologically obsolete, hemorrhaging clients, and desperately in need of modernization. Yet beneath the outdated infrastructure and management remained a core of quality craftsmanship and client relationships that could be salvaged. My offer was not the highest the board received, but it came with guarantees about preserving jobs and maintaining the company's presence in the community, factors that ultimately swayed the decision in my favor. The final purchase price was a fraction of what the company had once been worth, but still represented a significant investment on my part. Throughout the acquisition process, neither my father nor James knew the identity of the buyer. They were informed only that the new owner wished to remain anonymous until the formal transition of leadership, which would be announced at my father's retirement party. Which brings me back to tonight, standing outside this ballroom, preparing to walk into a room where my father believes he will simply be honored for his decades of service before handing the company to an unknown entity. As I enter the elegantly decorated space, I spot him immediately, holding court near the bar, still projecting confidence despite the circumstances. My mother stands beside him, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. James hovers nearby, his future uncertain in the wake of the sale. I circulate through the room, nodding politely to executives and board members who have no idea who I am. Many of them had met me years ago at company functions, but the awkward teenager they barely noticed has been replaced by a confident businessman they don't recognize. Midway through the evening, the chairman of the board takes the stage and begins the formal proceedings. He speaks glowingly of my father's contributions to the company and the industry, carefully sidestepping the recent difficulties. My father accepts the accolades with practiced humility, delivering a speech about legacy and the bright future ahead for Morgan Industries under its new ownership. And now, the chairman announces, I'd like to introduce the new owner of Morgan Industries, who will share his vision for the company's future. The room fills with anticipatory applause as I make my way to the stage. I can see confusion on my father's face as I approach, a vague recognition mixed with disbelief. My mother's hand flies to her mouth. James looks like he's seen a ghost. As I take the microphone, the room falls silent. Thank you, I begin. Many of you don't know me, though some might remember an awkward kid who used to take apart computers during company picnics. Murmurs ripple through the audience as recognition dawns. My father has gone completely still, his expression frozen somewhere between shock and disbelief. My name is Alexander Morgan. 15 years ago, in my father's office, I was told I would never succeed in business, that I lacked the instinct, the drive, and the practical mind for it. I pause, meeting my father's gaze directly for the first time. I'm not sharing this to embarrass anyone or to gloat. I'm sharing it because that moment changed the course of my life. It pushed me to prove something, not just to others, but to myself. I go on to outline my journey from Stanford to founding Predictitech to its successful acquisition. The room is utterly silent now, everyone's attention ping-ponging between my father and me. Morgan Industries was once a leader in its field because it represented the best thinking of its time, I continue. The company lost its way not because its core values were wrong, but because it failed to adapt those values to a changing world. I detail my plans for the company, a comprehensive modernization program, integration of advanced predictive maintenance systems, ironically an updated version of my original technology, and expansion into new markets while preserving the quality craftsmanship that had been the company's foundation. I'm not here to dismantle what my father built, I conclude. I'm here to honor it by helping it evolve, to take the best of its past and combine it with the best of what technology can offer its future. As I finish, uncertain applause breaks out, growing stronger as people process what they've just witnessed. My father remains motionless, his face unreadable. My mother is openly crying now, though whether from pride, shock, or some complex mixture of emotions, I can't tell. I step down from the stage, and the room seems to part before me as I approach my family. For a moment that stretches painfully, my father and I stand facing each other in silence. "You did all this to prove me wrong?" he finally asks, his voice low and strained. "I started that way, I admit. But somewhere along the way, it became about proving something to myself instead." He nods slowly, a complex array of emotions playing across his face. Pride, regret, confusion, and perhaps a hint of fear about his own obsolescence. "The company was failing," he says, a statement rather than a question. "Parts of it were, I acknowledge, but not its heart, not the things that really matter." Something shifts in his expression then. A subtle relaxation around the eyes, a slight lowering of his perpetually squared shoulders. "You'll need someone who understands the old systems while you implement the new," he says after a moment. "I will," I agree cautiously, unsure where he's heading. "I could consult," he offers, the words clearly difficult for him. "During the transition." And there it is, not an apology, not explicit acknowledgement of his misjudgment, but something approaching a concession. From Richard Morgan, it's practically a surrender. "I'd welcome your input," I reply, meaning it despite everything. Later that night, after most guests have departed, I find myself on the hotel's terrace with James. He's loosened his tie and looks more relaxed than I've seen him in years. "I should hate you right now," he says, though there's no venom in his voice. "Taking over what was supposed to be mine. Was it ever really what you wanted? Ask. Or what was expected of you?" He considers this, swirling the ice in his drink. Both, maybe. Hard to separate them after so long. He looks at me directly. "But I was never going to be able to save it. I know that now. There's a place for you in the new structure," I tell him. "If you want it. Your client relationships are valuable. But it would be different than what Dad had planned." "Different might be good," he admits. "The weight of being the chosen one gets heavy after a while." As I drive back to my hotel that night, I reflect on the strange symmetry of the evening. 15 years ago, in a wood-paneled office, my father had unintentionally set me on the path that would lead me back to purchase his failing company. His dismissal had fueled a determination that transformed not only my life but would now transform his legacy as well. My phone buzzes with a text from my mother. "Your grandfather Morgan would have been so proud tonight. He was an innovator too before your father took over and focused on tradition. Perhaps you're more like him than anyone knew." The message offers a new perspective on my father's resistance to change. Perhaps he too had been reacting to a perceived failure, trying to prove something to a ghost from his own past. As I pull into the hotel driveway, I realize that the true revenge isn't in the dramatic revelation or even in saving the company. It's in breaking the cycle of dismissal, of rigid thinking, of valuing tradition over innovation. The real victory isn't proving my father wrong. It's creating something better than either of us could have built alone. 6 months later, Morgan Industries, now Morgan Tech Solutions, launches its first integrated manufacturing platform, combining the precision craftsmanship of its heritage with cutting-edge predictive technology. My father, serving as a senior advisor, stands beside me at the launch event. We're not close, not yet, and perhaps we never will be in the way I once wished. But there's a grudging respect now, an acknowledgement of different but complementary strengths. "You're doing things differently than I would," he tells me after the presentation. But I'm beginning to see that differently doesn't always mean wrong. Coming from Richard Morgan, it's practically a declaration of love. The company that was meant to be my brother's inheritance has become something more valuable, a bridge between generations, between tradition and innovation. James now heads our client relations division, finally free to excel in the interpersonal aspects of business where his talents truly lie, unburdened by our father's specific expectations. During a family dinner celebrating the platform launch, the first such gathering without palpable tension in decades, my mother raises her glass. To fresh starts, she says simply. As we clink glasses, I realize that the most satisfying revenge isn't destroying what hurt you, it's transforming it into something better. Something that even those who doubted you can recognize as valuable. Have you ever been told you wouldn't succeed at something, only to use that doubt as fuel? Or have you found ways to reconcile with those who underestimated you? Share your story in the comments below, and if this journey of proving skeptics wrong resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe. Sometimes the people who believe in you the least motivate you the most, not to earn their approval, but to discover just how wrong their limitations can be.